What up, y'all? I am back for another video. We're here to continue the Rocky franchise with Rocky 5. Then tomorrow, Rocky Balboa. And I'll try to get the bands I love. It's going to be 3 days grace this week. I'll try to do that tomorrow. Probably be like this time tomorrow. Probably I'll do that one. And then the Rocky one, I'll do like my normal time. Depending on what time I get out, but Rocky 5. So we're gonna pretty much finish Route Rocky. We got this one, and then we got Balboa tomorrow. Then Thursday we're gonna do Creed 1 and Creed 2, and then we'll be done after that. I'll probably, my God, sorry about that. There will be a ranking at some point. I just don't know when I'll do that yet. But other than that, rewatching this movie, I haven't watched this one in years. I mainly, like I always say, I mainly watch 4, or I watch 1 and 4, or I watch 1 through 4 and then kind of be done. But Rocky 5, I think the last time I watched this one was probably when I was like 13 or 14, when one of the last times I think I did like an all Rocky watch through. At that time, it was up to Balboa. So, and I always remember, I didn't watch it as much compared to the others, but I don't hate it. I understand this one has a reputation. A lot of people look at this one as the worst one in the franchise. I think it's the weakest. I don't know if I would call it the worst, and it could just be because I fucking streamed Eternals last night. And the reason I didn't even mention it in the video is just because I was kind of drunk. So I'll admit, the only thing I remember is just it being boring as fuck and introducing a shit. God damn it! Sorry, guys. Them introducing a lot of characters and then basically trying to explain why they weren't there for several years. It was fucking boring. I didn't care, so that's why I really didn't mention it. But so watching that, I rewatched this one today. Rocky 5 is definitely the weakest, but it's not the worst. I think there are some goopy elements. This one is set. It's supposed to take place after 5, and obviously, due to his years of fighting, he has this thing that is basically it's like something with his brain that where he cannot he basically cannot fight legally. So we have this basically Don King character named what's this dude's name? George Washington Duke. He's literally Don King. Let's be honest. He's played by Richard Grant, or Gant, I think is his name. And then Rocky takes in this, starts training this guy named Tommy to become like a Rocky, kind of relive his years, but obviously the money. Then Tommy turns against him, and then I think the thing with this movie is it's dark comparatively to the other movies. The movies, other ones, there was death, obviously Mickey in 3, Apollo in 4, but they were still tonally very, Rocky was training. By the 3rd film, he was already a famous fighter, then definitely by 4. Whereas in this one, he goes from that to, he goes broke, and stuff like that, because one of his managers, I think, makes a bad deal, and I think it's not, you obviously didn't get the traditional final fight, and how, that high point of Rocky 4, this one definitely, I will admit, it's kind of a shock, and, I do like that they include Rocky's son, Robert, who I'll admit isn't, he's a kid actor, it's not amazing or anything. I like that they were trying to go back to Rocky's roots. Even the way Rocky dressed. He dressed like Rocky from the first two movies. With the hat, the leather jacket. They even moved it back to Philly, like his old town. I think they were trying to kind of capture that feel of the first one, that simplicity. Maybe they just didn't capture it right. And yeah, the final fight was kind of goofy. And then there are moments. Obviously, I'm not against rap. I like old rap, but even at this time, why is there rap in Rocky? It throws me off. Like it fits the Creed movies because it's modern day, so I understand it. So I kind of get it with those movies. Not in Rocky. It just throws me off. Like there's like this like '90s rap beat which dates it. It just dates it so much. And I get it. You could say the same thing about the Rocky movies from four because I've heard people say that about four. Oh, the super '80s music dates it, but I'm like it fits Rocky, but not. I don't know. But other than that, I think there's some solid scenes in this one. It's not gonna be one I will rewatch all the time for sure, but I don't think it's as bad as people make it, especially after watching shitty Eternals last night. Granted, I watched it for free. It it does dampen it. It makes me a little bit like, you know what, Rocky Five ain't that bad, but it's definitely a step down. So I guess kick off the review. So it kicks off, like the traditional Rocky beginning. They kick off from the fight from the previous movie. So they do that again in this one, and it's okay. And then we see Rocky after that. You have this really good scene that I don't. The only thing is, it doesn't really lead to anything. There's this scene where Rocky's like, I think this is immediately. It's supposed to be like right after. The only issue is with this scene. You gotta remember, this one came out in '90, so this was 5 years. I don't know why they took so long to do Rocky. If you're gonna do, I think that was the other issue. If you're gonna do a Rocky Five, he doesn't. The only one that kind of looks similar is Rocky and Adrian, largely because Adrian, to be honest, she looks pretty much the same in all five movies she's in. But the issue is even like Tony, Duke, who trained Apollo. He looks like you watch that scene. He's in the hotel room. I think they're in, or in the bathroom in the shower, like in the locker room. He even looks like he's aged, dude. Like he has a grayer beard. He looks way different than he did in Rocky Five, and we're supposed to believe it's the same night. So there's a scene Rocky's like hands are shaking. It doesn't lead to anything, but I think it's making it. I think maybe it was supposed to be tied to like his uh you know health issue, which gets mentioned later. So he comes back home. We get kind of like a cool little scene where they play like a band version of the like not like a marching band version of the Rocky theme. He gives like this speech. This is where we meet Duke, who's basically based off of Don King. And his prize fighter Kane challenged him to a fight, challenged Rocky to a fight, but Rocky, declines because he's forced to retire. And this is where it's revealed he, returns home. This is where they go broke because Paulie makes basically a bad deal and he signs a power of attorney to Rocky's accountant who tried to steal money and basically, yeah, and his mansion was mortgaged. And so that's why it has a darker feel to it because, like, immediately Rocky's life goes to shit. Like, he can't fight medically, he loses his house, you know, um, and, yeah, so they had to do like an auction for all their stuff. And there's like even a scene which I actually think is a really well done scene where Rocky, it's Robert just sitting on like Rocky's bike. I think it's supposed to be the same bike he did the ride in Rocky 3, and that gets auctioned off, and even the guy tells, "Oh, you got to get off the bike, kid." It's just kind of sad. So like I think that stuff was done well. And then obviously Rocky wants to do the fight because he needs the money. He doesn't, because now they end up having to move back to their old house, Robert, who's they start off the film like he's supposed to be like your average kid who's not super athletic. He's like more about his brains and stuff. And I like that tone they were going, and I understand it is a bit darker shift compared to the first three. And then there is a really good scene though. Granted, I'm jumping forward a bit, but Rocky visits Mickey's gym, and you get a scene where he goes into the gym and he's like remembering Mickey. And I think this is a later like a scene they actually got the actor to come back for. He looks much older. It was a really good scene. You got like Mickey giving him some inspirational words in the ring, like he was actually talking to him. I think they did a really good job with that. That's like probably the best scene in the entire movie. Like I think there's moments, but then like fucking then they shift to like this like '90s like hip hop beat. I'm like, why? I'm not watching fucking like some movie like Above the Rim, good movie, but that's not what Rocky is. It just is such a weird. So then Rocky, this is where we're introduced to Tommy Gunn, who, from the jump, I initially was okay with him, but eventually he's kind of supposed to be this big asshole, so it doesn't bother me. Like I think that's one element I hear a lot of people don't like about the movie is they fucking think Tommy's a douchebag, but I think maybe that's the point. But they even think it goes back to like we're supposed to hate him. It's more than that. Like they legit think he's just a shitty character. So Duke tries this challenge for another fight. Provoke Rocky to do another fight, but mainly um, Adrian refuses, and I think um, I get what they were doing with Adrian. I it can come off a bit annoying, but she loves her husband. At the end of the day, she doesn't want him to die, and I mean that would be a real thing. And I think that's an aspect I like about one of the reasons I say their relationship to me is the best relationship in cinema. It feels like a real relationship. I think that would really happen. As much as like yeah, she was fine with him fighting before. This is an injury that like if he gets this can kill him. She doesn't want to lose him, so it's understandable why she doesn't. So then while this is happening, Robert goes to school at Rocky's old school, where it's a lot more like the kids who are like, obviously more lower economics and more like aggressive. So he gets kind of bullied initially, and those scenes are okay. It's typical, like it's just kind of how movies were. But then yeah, um, but Tommy Gunn wants Rocky to become his managers. One of the reasons I do like rewatching this movie, I like it. It's almost like a precursor to Creed in a way. It sets up Rocky as becoming the Mickey position. Obviously, it doesn't go right because when we get to the end of the film, but it makes sense though. Like it sets it up perfectly in that sense. Like Rocky, okay, you can't fight no more, but you can manage somebody and bring them up. So it does set that up to where we go in the next. Obviously we have Balboa, but then the Creed 1 and Creed 2. So I think it sets it up. Obviously, I don't think that was the intention because we get Balboa even the next film where he does fight again. So that wasn't planned, but it just now with the Creed films, it does justify this film's existence. I understand there's some goofy elements like I understand I'm harping on the hip hop thing. I think Rocky should stick to either traditional, like the main Rocky theme, or like 80s, like training rock music. You shouldn't have like. It just throws me off. It just throws the movie off, the tone. So he starts training Tommy Gunn, even moving him in the house with the family and all that. And you can tell from the jump, Robert, his son, is getting jealous. Like, because he's starting to like, because Rocky's starting to look at Tommy almost like his own son. Like, so he starts getting Tommy, and Tommy starts having fights and just knocking everyone out and going through the opponents. But Rocky wants to do it like the slow way and stuff, not immediately give him title shots. But you can tell Tommy eventually he's like, I want my title shot. So after a few more fights, after um So he starts getting more fights while this is happening. Tom Robert starts training himself, because he's trying to defend himself from the bully. We get a really good scene where he beats up the bully pretty cool. That was pretty badass, I'm not gonna lie. So that was kind of fun. Then, so Tommy starts having more fights, and then Duke almost starts taking a liking to him and almost wants to become his manager, and even offers, like, you can have Union King for a world title fight. And then, yeah, while this is happening, yeah, Robert becomes more of, like, he starts smoking. Again, I'm jumping ahead a bit. Starts smoking. He's hanging out with, like, the rougher kids because, his father wasn't there. And I like that they do that. That aspect of the film is good. So, then we get, like, a scene where it's Christmas and Rocky and his son have a fight. Son kind of storms off. While this is happening, Tommy becomes, because while this is happening, he's at a party with Duke, and Duke becomes pretty much his manager, and stops training under Rocky, and then Rocky and Tommy kind of have a quick fight, like a argument, and then we get a scene where Adrian basically tells Rocky, "You're losing your family," and one of the best scenes, though, there's a scene where this is like before that scene, Rocky's like on the fucking car of Tom like Tommy's in his car. Even driving, Rocky's like holding on, saying stuff. And he's trying to tell him, like, you're doing the wrong thing, you're getting caught up in the money. And the problem with this scene was it was supposed to be dramatic, but it was kind of, I was dying, I'm not gonna lie. It was the way he was talking. He was trying to be. I get what he was trying to do. You know how people sometimes meme Rocky? I usually don't do that. The other was this one. At least this scene. It just was kind of funny. But the scene with him and Adrian is really good. That, like those moments, just in general, in all 5 movies she's in, are just, it feels like a real relationship. I think that's one of the things that's, like, hard for the most part. But by this point, it should have been easy for them. This is the 5th movie. So, after that, Tommy gets the fight with Union Kane. Tommy easily wins. And we get a scene where he basically gets roasted by the media. And throughout the film, they're calling him, like, Tommy doesn't like being called Rocky's clone. He's like Rocky's gun. I think that's one of the titles of the magazine, one of the headlines. Like, they were basically making, like, you're just you was in Rocky's shadow the entire time. So, like, there's this scene where after he wins the title, and he gets booed too. Like, because they were initially trying to pull, like, I guess I'm using wrestling terms again. They were trying to make him like the baby face initially, but then he drops Rocky, he turns heel almost, and the crowd instantly turns on him. And he even thinks Duke for giving him the opportunity, not Rocky. So Rocky goes to the bar, and after basically Tommy gets destroyed by the media. This was one of the times. This was actually when the media wasn't shit. So, but it was pretty funny, like, just seeing them, like, you're just Rocky Shadow. You beat up a paper champion, like, all this, that it was basically a rigged fight. All this shit. Tommy storms off, and Duke basically says, "You got to fight Rocky." So Duke and Tommy go to the bar, Andy's bar. And I think one thing I will say, Rocky 5 does. I like that they're trying to go back to that original, like, Rocky's even in the outfit he wore in those first 2 movies. Like, it's back in Philly. So I think maybe that's what they wanted to do. I get what they were going for. They figured, the last few films, like, even in 3, Rocky 3 was in LA I think it was LA, and then Madison Square Garden. Whereas Rocky 4 was in Russia, of course. So it was like, they wanted to kind of keep it grounded and, like, okay, let's put it back in Philly, kind of go back to, like, the just simple. So I get what they were going for, but maybe just some ways they didn't execute it well. So Tommy and Duke confront Rocky at the bar. They try to pitch him for a fight. Paulie, obviously, who I fucking love Paulie. Man, Paulie's fucking great. He's one of my favorite aspects of these movies. Paulie insults Tommy. Tommy punches him out, and then Rocky's like, oh, hell no. Then we get a fight. Tommy, Rocky initially takes out Tommy. This fight, I get what they were going for, but it went on too long. It shouldn't have been, like, as long as an actual fight like the ones we got. Because, two things. Rocky literally beat up in Rocky 3. I mean, obviously he beat Apollo. But, like, in Rocky 3, he beats Mr. T. The guy beats him. Who beat him. And then in Rocky 4, he beats this giant Russian who was on steroids, by the way. Like, but he's having trouble just beating this guy again. The guy is pretty muscular, and Rocky is a bit older. Older, but come on, dude. He can't beat this guy, but he's having a trouble beating this guy, but he was able. I'm not saying it was no cakewalk, him beating those guys, but it's just like, come on. This fight should have been as long as, like, an actual fight. At points, it was ridiculous. Rocky was slamming him, like... And maybe they were going for it because Rocky started as, like, a street fighter, so maybe they wanted to go back to that route, but maybe they didn't need to do that. Maybe they should have just did an actual fight, honestly. They would have been better off doing that. So if the one thing, obviously, I'll just probably more traditional Rocky music. That's the only other thing I would change. Honestly, I would have just had a traditional fight in the end. Doing a street fight, the more I think about it, it's kind of goofy. Rocky wins in the end, punches out Duke, movie ends. This movie isn't horrible. I think it ends pretty bad. That street fight should not have went as long as it did. It just... I think they would have just been better off doing an actual fight in the end between the two, and then Rocky wins it. Or, it didn't need to be a street fight. That was kind of a weird... I can understand in that way it feels like a fucking... It throws you off. But I think the emotional stuff, like the stuff with the Mickey scene is my favorite scene in the entire movie. The scene with him and Adrian. In the scene with his son... Oh, I didn't bring it up. I should have brought it up. Like, where Rocky talks with his son and, kind of tells him, like, you are my number one. Kind of reassures him. I like that scene. I think that stuff is good. There is some goofy shit. Like, some of the music choices. Some of even the fights. There's no real fights. They're all, like, 2-second, knockouts. And stuff like that. But I don't think this is as bad as some make it. It's definitely not going to be one I'm going to watch all the time. I will mainly, and even as much as I like Creed, even Creed 1 and Creed 2, I'll watch Creed 1 maybe more often, but as good as those movies are, I mainly stick to the first 4, honestly, personally. But I do like this movie for what it is. It's not horrible, and I can understand why it's often people's weak. It's the weakest. I guess if you had to know my last one, where I put dead last in terms of rankings, I think this one would be it. This one would be it. It's not as strong as those first 4 films, but it's watchable, and at the end of the day, it's Sylvester Stallone. You get to see Rocky, and in my way, I think, like I mentioned earlier, it sets up, in a way, Creed. Him becoming, like, a manager and more of a trainer, and not, becoming that Mickey role. So I think it does set it up perfectly for that, even though that Creed wasn't even a thought process obviously by this film, or even when Balboa comes out. So Rocky Balboa. Okay, I guess before I get to that, I would give this film out of 10 like a 7, about like a 7, 6.5, about one of those two. But Rocky Balboa was the next one, or Rocky 6. I think this one is pretty good. You get some really good lines. It's kind of good. It's a good send off for Rocky the fight isn't great, but it was kind of good to see him in a final fight, and then go into what he does in the Creed movie. So I think this movie's fine. It's not amazing. Unfortunately, a lot of elements are missing, like Adrian. So it's stuff like and I don't remember Paulie is in it either. So it's like those elements are missing, but I think all around it's still a great film. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. And then there's that. But other than that, I'm gonna cheers one more time. That is usual. Fuck Warner Brothers. Fuck Disney. Fuck LeBron. Fuck Colin Kaepernick. Fuck Kevin Smith and fuck Biden. I'll talk to y'all later or tomorrow. Peace.